I died on my 28th birthday, standing in my childhood home watching my fiancé David kiss my mother. Not a friendly kiss. Not a celebratory kiss. The kind of kiss that made my stomach turn and my world shatter. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," my mother said, pulling away from David to smile at me. "We have something to tell you." I stared at them, my mother 52 and beautiful and David 30, the man I'd been planning to marry in 3 weeks. They were holding hands like teenagers. "We're in love," David said, and he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "We've been seeing each other for 6 months. We tried to fight it, Claire, but some things are just meant to be." "You're joking," I whispered. "I know this is hard to understand," my mother said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "But David and I have a connection you and he never had. Real passion. Real understanding. You're my mother. And you're my daughter, which is why I waited until after your birthday to tell you. I didn't want to ruin your special day." I looked at David, the man I'd supported through law school, the man I'd waited for while he built his career, the man who'd proposed to me 6 months ago with my grandmother's ring. 6 months. They'd started their affair the day he proposed to me. "How could you?" I asked him. "Your mother makes me feel alive in a way you never did," David said simply. "You're sweet, Claire, but you're boring. Your mother is exciting. Passionate. Everything I didn't know I needed. We're getting married," my mother announced. "In Vegas next week. I hope you can be happy for us." I felt something inside me break. Not just my heart but something deeper. My ability to believe in goodness, maybe. My trust in the people who were supposed to love me. "Get out," I said quietly. "Claire, be reasonable. Get out of my house." I screamed. "Both of you." "Actually," my mother said, her smile turning cold, "this is still technically my house. I never transferred the deed after your father died, remember? I've been letting you live here out of kindness. You can't. I can. And I am. David and I will be moving in after we get back from Vegas. You have 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live." They left together, my mother's laughter echoing behind them. I stood in the living room, my childhood home, the place where my father had raised me with so much love before cancer took him 5 years ago, and felt utterly destroyed. Then I walked to the bathroom, found my father's old sleeping pills that my mother had never thrown away, and swallowed the entire bottle. If this was what life had to offer, I didn't want it anymore. As I lay on the bathroom floor, consciousness fading, my last thought was, I wish I could go back. I wish I could stop this before it started. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in my father's hospital room. He was sitting up in bed, thin and pale from chemo, smiling at me despite his pain. "Claire Bear," he said in the voice I hadn't heard in 5 years. "I want you to meet someone. This is David Chun. He's a law student who volunteers here at the hospital. David, this is my daughter Claire." I turned and saw David, 25 years old, handsome and earnest, shaking my hand with a warm smile. "It's wonderful to meet you," David said. "Your father talks about you constantly." I stared at him, memories flooding back. This was 3 years before my father's death. 3 years before David and I would start dating. 3 years before he'd propose and then betray me with my mother. This was the day they met. I pulled my hand away from David's like I'd been burned. "Claire." My father looked concerned. "Are you okay?" "I need some air," I managed and practically ran from the room. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and tried to process what was happening. I died. I definitely died. I remembered the pills, the darkness, the absolute certainty that I was done. But now I was here in the past on the exact day David had entered our lives. I was 23 again. My father was alive. My mother was still just my annoying, vain mother who flirted with every man she met but hadn't yet stolen my fiancé. And I had a choice. I could let things play out the way they had before, becoming friends with David, dating him after my father's death, falling in love with him, watching him fall in love with my mother. Or I could stop it before it started. I went back into the room, my decision made. "Dad, I actually need to get going. Work emergency." "Oh, that's too bad. David was just telling me about his work at the legal clinic." "I'm sure it's fascinating," I interrupted, not looking at David. "But I really have to go. I'll come back tomorrow." I kissed my father's forehead and left without acknowledging David at all. Over the next 3 months, I avoided the hospital whenever David volunteered. I called my father during David's shift, visited during different times, made excuses whenever Dad tried to invite David to family dinners. "Why don't you like David?" my father asked one evening. "He's a good young man. Smart, kind, ambitious. I thought you two would get along." "I'm sure he's great, Dad. I'm just busy with work." "Claire, I won't be around forever. I'd like to know you have people in your life. Friends. Maybe more than friends." "Dad, David asks about you," my father continued. "Every time he volunteers, he asks if you'll be visiting. I think he's interested in you." "Well, I'm not interested in him." My father looked hurt and I felt guilty, but not guilty enough to change my mind. Then, for months after my rebirth, my father called me with news that made my blood run cold. "Claire, I invited David to your mother's birthday party this weekend. She's been so stressed about turning 50, and I thought having some young people around would cheer her up." "Dad, no. It's already done. He's bringing a nice bottle of wine. Please be friendly to him, Claire." "For me." I hung up and stared at the phone, panic rising in my chest. In my original timeline, I hadn't attended my mother's 50th birthday party. I'd been out of town for work. David had gone alone to support my father, had spent the evening talking to my mother, had discovered their connection. That party had been the beginning of their affair, even though I hadn't known it at the time. I couldn't let it happen again. Saturday evening, I arrived at my parents' house early. The party was in full swing. My mother's wealthy friends, her book club members, her tennis partners. My mother held court in the center, wearing a dress too young for her age, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. My mother had always been beautiful. Even at 50, she turned heads. She'd been a model in her 20s, had married my father, a successful businessman 20 years her senior, and had coasted on his money and her looks ever since. My father loved her despite her vanity and selfishness. I'd spent my childhood watching him spoil her, indulge her, worship her. And she'd repaid him by seducing my fiancé while he was dying of cancer. "Claire." My mother spotted me and waved me over. "Darling, you look nice." Nice. The way she always described me. Never beautiful, never stunning. Just nice. "Happy birthday, Mom." 50 and fabulous, she said, doing a little spin. "Everyone says I don't look a day over 35. Everyone's very polite." Her smile tightened. "Was that sarcasm?" "You know I don't appreciate sarcasm, Claire." "Just a joke, Mom." "Well, try to be pleasant tonight. Your father invited some of his hospital volunteer friends, and I want to make a good impression." Right on cue, David walked in carrying a bottle of expensive wine. My father greeted him warmly, introducing him to various guests. I watched as David's eyes scanned the room and landed on my mother. Even from across the room, I could see his appreciation. My mother was holding court in a circle of admirers, laughing at something one of her friends had said. She looked radiant, confident, magnetic, everything I wasn't. David made his way toward her, and I intercepted him. "David," I said, stepping directly into his path. "Claire, I was hoping you'd be here." He smiled that earnest smile that had once made my heart flutter. "Your father talks about you so much, I feel like I already know you." "I'm sure he does." I took David's arm firmly. "Let me introduce you to some people." I steered him away from my mother, toward a group of my father's business associates, older men with zero interest in hospital volunteers or small talk. "This is David Chun," I told them. "He's a law student and volunteer at the hospital where my father receives treatment." The men nodded politely and immediately went back to discussing stock portfolios. David stood there awkwardly, trying to engage but clearly out of his depth. "So," I said loudly, "David, tell me about your volunteer work. What made you choose that hospital?" "Well, I wanted to give back to the community." "Fascinating," I interrupted. "Have you considered volunteering at other hospitals? Maybe in different cities? Very far away cities?" David looked confused. I'm doing my law degree here, so..." "Of course. Makes sense." I kept my grip on his arm. "Let me get you a drink." I led him to the bar, away from where my mother was still entertaining her guests. "You seem nervous," David observed. Are you okay? Perfect. Why? You're squeezing my arm pretty hard. I released him immediately. Sorry. Stress. Work stuff. Your father mentioned you work in marketing? Graphic design. That's creative. I'm terrible at anything artistic. I can barely draw stick figures. How unfortunate. David laughed, thinking I was joking. You're funny. Your dad said you were funny. Did he? He also said you're private. That you don't let people in easily. Smart man, my father. I'd like to get to know you better, David said, his smile warm and genuine. Maybe we could get coffee sometime? In my original timeline, this was where I'd said yes. Where I'd been charmed by his interest, flattered by his attention. Where I'd thought, this is nice. He seems nice. This time I said, no, thank you. David blinked. Oh, okay. Can I ask why? I don't think we'd have anything in common. We both care about your father. That's not enough. Then let me find out what else we might have in common. One coffee. If it's terrible, I'll never ask again. David. Claire. My mother's voice cut through the noise. She was walking toward us, her eyes locked on David with obvious interest. Who is this handsome young man? My stomach dropped. Mother, this is David. He volunteers at Dad's hospital. David, my mother purred, extending her hand like she expected him to kiss it. I'm Victoria, Claire's mother. David shook her hand, and I saw his eyes widen slightly. My mother had that effect on men. It's wonderful to meet you, David said. Thank you for having me at your party. Oh, any friend of my husband's is welcome. My mother's eyes swept over him appreciatively. You're a law student? Yes, ma'am. Please call me Victoria. Ma'am makes me sound old. She laughed, a practiced musical sound. What kind of law are you studying? Corporate law, actually. I'm hoping to work for. How ambitious. I love ambitious men. My mother touched David's arm lightly. You must tell me all about it. Claire, darling, would you mind getting me a drink? I'm absolutely parched. It was a dismissal. My mother wanted David to herself. Actually, I said, linking my arm through David's again. David and I were just about to step outside for some air. Weren't we, David? David looked confused but nodded. Sure. But I wanted to talk to him, my mother said, her smile tightening. And you can. Later. Come on, David. I practically dragged him outside to the garden before my mother could protest. What was that about? David asked once we were alone. My mother can be overwhelming. I was saving you. She seemed nice. She seemed interested in you. In a friendly way. David, my mother doesn't do friendly with attractive men. She flirts. Constantly. It's who she is. She's married to your father. That has never stopped her before. David frowned. Are you saying your mother cheats on your father? I'm saying my mother likes male attention and doesn't always care where it comes from. That's a serious accusation. It's an observation based on a lifetime of watching her. We stood in awkward silence. Finally, David said, I should probably go. I don't want to cause problems between you and your mother. David, wait. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry for being weird tonight. The truth is, I don't think we should spend time together. Not because of you. Because of my mother. What? You're exactly her type. Young, handsome, ambitious, available. If you stay around my family, she will try to sink her claws into you. And my father doesn't deserve that. I would never. You say that now. But my mother is very good at what she does. She spent her whole life using her looks to get what she wants. Don't become another one of her conquests. David looked offended. I'm not some puppet who can be seduced against his will. I have self-control. Everyone thinks that. Until they don't. You don't even know me. I know enough. No, you don't. You've judged me based on. What? The fact that your mother smiled at me. David shook his head. You know what? You're right. We wouldn't have anything in common. Because I try to see the best in people, and you clearly don't. He walked back into the house, leaving me standing alone in the garden. I'd done it. I'd driven him away. I protected my father, my family, myself. So why did I feel so terrible? I went back inside and found my father. Dad, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to head home. Already? The party just started. I know. I'm sorry. Happy birthday to Mom. I kissed his cheek and left before he could ask questions. Over the next month, I avoided my parents' house as much as possible. I called my father regularly but always had excuses for why I couldn't visit. Then my father called with news that made my heart stop. Claire, I need to tell you something. David has been asking about you. What? He wants to apologize for whatever happened at the party. He says you two had a misunderstanding. Dad, I don't want to talk to him. He's a good young man, Claire, and he seems genuinely interested in getting to know you. Well, I'm not interested in getting to know him. Why not? You haven't even given him a chance. Dad, please. Can you just tell him I'm not interested? I already did. But he's persistent. Says he doesn't give up easily. Great. Just what I needed. David with a crush. 2 weeks later, I ran into David at the hospital. I'd gone to visit my father during what I thought was David's day off, but apparently, he'd switched shifts. Claire, he said, spotting me in the hallway. Can we talk? I'm here to see my father. 5 minutes. Please. Against my better judgment, I followed him to a quiet waiting area. I want to apologize, David said, for what I said at the party. About judging people. That was unfair. It was accurate. Maybe. But you had your reasons. I've been thinking about what you said about your mother. And I realized, you were trying to protect your father. Yes. That's admirable. Misguided but admirable. Misguided. I'm not going to fall for your mother, Claire. I'm not interested in her. I'm interested in you. My heart did a traitorous flip. David. I know you said no to coffee, but what about lunch? Or dinner? Or a walk in the park? Just give me one chance to prove I'm not the guy you think I am. I looked at him, earnest, hopeful, genuine. In my original timeline, I'd said yes to this. I'd given him a chance. And he'd eventually destroyed me. No, I said firmly. I'm not interested. Please stop asking. David's face fell. Can I ask why? Is it something I did? It's something you will do. If I let you into my life. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to. The answer is no. I walked away, feeling his confused gaze following me. For the next 6 months, I maintained my distance. David eventually stopped asking. My father stopped pushing. Life went on. Then, one terrible day, my father called me at work. Claire, I need you to come to the hospital. It's urgent. My heart dropped. What happened? The cancer. It spread. They're saying 6 months. Maybe less. I drove to the hospital in a daze. 6 months. In my original timeline, my father had lived 2 years after his 50th birthday. But somehow, in this timeline, things were worse. Had I changed something? Had my refusal to let David into our lives affected my father's health somehow? I found my father in his hospital room, my mother sitting beside him crying. Dad, I whispered. Claire Bear. He smiled weakly. Come here. I sat on the other side of his bed and took his hand. I don't want you to be alone when I'm gone, he said. Dad, don't. Let me say this. You're 24 years old. You have no serious relationships. You work too much. You don't let people in. I'm fine. You're lonely. I can see it. And it breaks my heart. I squeezed his hand, tears streaming down my face. Promise me you'll try, my father said. Promise me you'll let someone in. Someone good. Someone who deserves you. I promise. My father smiled. Good. Now there's someone I want you to meet. He's been helping your mother and me a lot lately, and... No, I said immediately. Dad, not David. Why not? He's perfect for you. He's not. Trust me. Please. My father looked sad but nodded. Okay. If you're sure. I'm sure. But over the next few months, as my father's health declined, David was constantly around. He helped my mother with errands. He sat with my father when I couldn't be there. He became part of our family despite my objections. And I saw the way my mother looked at him. It was starting again. Even without me dating David, even without our engagement, my mother was being drawn to him. One evening, I found them alone in my father's hospital room. My father was sleeping. My mother and David were standing close together, talking in low voices. I cleared my throat, and they jumped apart. "Claire," my mother said, "we were just discussing your father's care." "I'm sure you were." David looked uncomfortable. "I should go. I'll see you tomorrow, Mrs. Harrison." After he left, I turned to my mother. "Stay away from him." "Excuse me, David. Stay away from him." My mother laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. He's been very helpful during this difficult time. I know what you're doing. I see how you look at him." "And how do I look at him?" "Like prey." My mother's face hardened. "You're being insulting. David is a friend of the family. He's half your age. So? I'm not doing anything inappropriate." "Not yet." My mother stepped closer, her eyes cold. "Let me tell you something, Claire. You had your chance with David. You rejected him over and over. You don't get to dictate who I'm friends with just because you're jealous." "Jealous? You think I'm jealous?" "I think you realized too late that you made a mistake. And now you're trying to keep him away from me because you know he prefers me." "Mom, this is insane." "Is it? David and I have a connection. We talk for hours. We understand each other. He confides in me about things he'd never tell you. He's trying to be supportive because Dad is dying. Maybe. Or maybe he just likes spending time with me more than he ever liked chasing after you." I stared at my mother, seeing the same cruel satisfaction in her eyes that I'd seen in my original timeline when she'd announced her engagement to David. She wanted him. And she didn't care that my father was dying. She didn't care that David was 30 years younger. She didn't care about anything except what she wanted. "If you pursue him," I said quietly, "I will never forgive you." "Then I guess you'll never forgive me," my mother said. "Because I'm done asking permission to live my life." My father died 3 months later. At his funeral, David stood beside my mother, offering her support while I stood alone on the other side of the casket. After the service, my mother announced she was selling the house. "I need a fresh start," she said. "Too many memories here." "Where will you go?" "I've rented a condo downtown. Much more modern." David has been helping me look at places. Of course he had. 1 week after my father's funeral, my mother invited me to lunch. "I have something to tell you," she said once we were seated. "Let me guess. You and David are together." My mother smiled. "He's been such a comfort during this difficult time. Dad's been dead for a week. And I'm allowed to move on. Your father wouldn't want me to be alone." "Dad's been dead for a week," I repeated, my voice rising. "You couldn't even wait a month?" "Claire, lower your voice. You're disgusting. Both of you. We didn't plan this. It just happened." "Nothing just happens with you, Mother. You saw something you wanted and you took it. Like always. If you're going to be dramatic, I'm being honest. You seduced a man 30 years younger than you while your husband was dying. That's not moving on. That's betrayal." My mother's face turned cold. "Your father and I had an understanding. Our marriage was complicated. Dad loved you. And I loved him. In my way. But he was old and sick, and I'm still young and alive. I deserve happiness too. At what cost? At whatever cost I choose. I'm done apologizing for wanting things." I stood up. "I hope he was worth it. Because you've lost your daughter. Claire. Stay away from me. Both of you." I walked out of the restaurant and didn't look back. Over the next year, I rebuilt my life without my mother in it. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion and building a portfolio that got noticed by major firms. I found a therapist who helped me process my father's death and my mother's betrayal. And I watched from a distance as my mother and David's relationship unfolded exactly as it had in my original timeline. Minus me as the tragic third party. They moved in together. They traveled together. They posted sickeningly sweet photos on social media. And my mother looked happier than she'd ever been. It wasn't fair. She destroyed our family, betrayed my father's memory, and she was being rewarded for it. Meanwhile, I was alone at 26 processing grief and trauma, wondering if I'd made the right choices. On the 2-year anniversary of my father's death, I visited his grave. I was standing there alone when someone approached. Claire. I turned and saw a man about my age, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said. I'm Nathan. I work at the cemetery. I've seen you here before. Oh. I don't usually talk to visitors, but you always look so sad. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I almost said I was fine. Almost sent him away. Almost retreated back into my shell. But I thought about my father's request. Promise me you'll let someone in. I'm okay, I said. Just missing my dad. I get that. I lost my mom 3 years ago. It doesn't get easier exactly. But it gets different. Yeah, different. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Would you like to get coffee sometime? Nathan asked. Just as friends. I know a great place that serves terrible coffee but amazing pastries. I looked at him, earnest, kind, clearly nervous. Not charming like David. Not polished. Just genuine. Okay, I said. Coffee sounds nice. Nathan smiled and something in my chest loosened slightly. Maybe, just maybe, I could build something new from the ashes of everything I'd lost. Nathan and I started as friends. Coffee turned into lunch, lunch turned into walks, walks turned into long conversations about grief and healing and learning to live again. He was a landscape architect who'd taken the cemetery job to be closer to his mother's grave. He understood loss in a way most people didn't. He didn't try to fix me or rush me, or push me into anything I wasn't ready for. He just existed alongside me, patient and steady. 6 months into our friendship, Nathan asked me on an actual date. I know we've been friends, he said. But I'd like to be more than that. If you're interested. I thought about David and my mother. About betrayal and heartbreak. About all the reasons I'd avoided relationships. Then I thought about my father's words. Let someone in. I'm interested, I said. Dating Nathan was nothing like dating David had been in my original timeline. Nathan asked about my day and actually listened. Nathan remembered small details about my life. Nathan introduced me to his friends and made space for me in his world without demanding I give up mine. Nathan was safe. And after everything I'd been through, safe felt like a gift. We were together for 2 years before he proposed. In the cemetery where we'd met, beside my father's grave. I wanted your dad's blessing, Nathan said, kneeling beside the headstone. I hope that's not weird. I was crying too hard to answer. I just nodded. We got married in a small ceremony with close friends. My mother wasn't invited. She sent a card anyway. Congratulations. David and I are so happy for you. I threw it away without reading it to Nathan. But 2 weeks after our wedding, my mother called. Claire, we need to talk. No, we don't. Please. It's important. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her for coffee. My mother arrived looking older than I remembered. 55 now, with lines around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. David wasn't with her. Thank you for coming, she said. What do you want? I wanted to apologize. I stared at her. You what? I was wrong. About David. About everything. My mother's eyes filled with tears. He left me. 3 months ago. For someone younger. Despite everything, I felt a small stab of sympathy. I'm sorry. He said I was too old. Too needy. That our relationship had run its course. She laughed bitterly. I'm 55. And I've been left by a man half my age for a woman half his age. The irony isn't lost on me. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I understand now. What I did to you. To your father. It was cruel and selfish, and I threw away my relationship with my daughter for a man who didn't even really want me. You're only apologizing because it didn't work out. Maybe. Probably. But I'm also apologizing because I miss you. You're all I have left of your father. And I destroyed our relationship because I couldn't control myself. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She wasn't the confident, beautiful woman who'd stolen my fiancé. She was just a lonely, aging woman who'd made terrible choices. I forgive you, I said quietly. My mother's eyes widened. You do. I forgive you. But that doesn't mean I want you in my life. Claire. You hurt me. Badly. And yes, it's partly because it didn't work out with David. But even if it had, what you did was unforgivable. You chose a man over your daughter. Over your dying husband's memory. That's not something I can just forget. So what does this mean? It means I don't hate you anymore. But I also don't trust you. And I don't want a relationship with you. My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Good. I stood to leave. Claire, my mother called. Are you happy? With Nathan? I thought about my husband, kind, steady, loyal Nathan who'd never once made me question his intentions. Yes, I said. I am. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy. I left the coffee shop and never saw my mother again. Over the next decade, I built a life I was proud of. Nathan and I had 2 children, a son and a daughter. I advanced in my career, eventually starting my own design firm. We bought a house with a big backyard where our kids could play. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. When I was 38, I received news that my mother had died. Heart attack. She'd been alone when it happened. The lawyer handling her estate contacted me. I was her only living relative. She left everything to you, the lawyer said. Her condo, her savings, and a letter. The letter was handwritten. Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I want you to know that the last 10 years of my life were the loneliest I've ever experienced. David left me, my friends drifted away. And I spent every day regretting the choices that cost me my daughter. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I was proud of you. I followed your career from a distance. I saw photos of your wedding, your children. You built a beautiful life and you did it without me. That's my greatest regret, that I missed watching you become the woman you are. I was a terrible mother. I was selfish and vain and cruel. But I loved you in my limited, broken way. I hope that counts for something. I'm leaving you everything because you're the only good thing I ever created. Please don't let my mistakes poison your life. Be happy. Love your children the way I should have loved you. I'm sorry. Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Nathan found me in our bedroom, holding the letter. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know. She apologized. She said she was proud of me. That's something. It's too late. Maybe. But you can still take something from it. Like what? Like the knowledge that you broke the cycle. You're not her, Claire. You're nothing like her. You love our kids unconditionally. You've built a life based on genuine connection, not manipulation. You won. I looked at my husband, this good man who'd stood by me through my darkest moments. Yeah, I said. I did. We buried my mother next to my father. At her funeral there were maybe 10 people, mostly neighbors and her lawyer. David didn't come. I stood at her grave and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just a distant sort of pity for a woman who'd wasted her life chasing validation from men instead of building real relationships. Goodbye, Mom, I said. I hope you found whatever it was you were looking for. 20 years later, I was 55 years old, the same age my mother had been when David left her. My children were grown and starting their own families. My design firm was thriving. Nathan and I had been married for 27 years. I was standing in my office reviewing plans for a major project when my assistant buzzed me. Mrs. Harrison, there's someone here to see you. A David Chon. My heart stopped. Tell him I'm not available. He says it's important. He says he knew your mother. I hadn't thought about David in years. Last I'd heard, he'd married the woman he'd left my mother for, had kids, was a successful lawyer. Fine. Send him in. David walked into my office looking older, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes, but still handsome in that polished way of his. Claire, he said. Thank you for seeing me. You said this was about my mother? In a way. He sat down across from my desk. I heard about her passing. I wanted to offer my condolences. That was 20 years ago, David. I know. I should have reached out then. But I was ashamed. Of what? Of how I treated her. How I treated you. How I treated your father. David leaned forward. Claire, I was young and stupid. I made terrible choices. And I've spent the last 20 years regretting them. Why are you here? Because I'm getting divorced. Again. 3rd time. He laughed bitterly. And my therapist suggested I make amends with people I've hurt. You and your mother are at the top of that list. My mother is dead. I know. Which is why I'm here. To apologize to you. I looked at him, this man who had once been at the center of my universe, who had destroyed my first life and almost destroyed this one. Apology acknowledged, I said. Is that all? Don't you want to know why? Why I did it? Not particularly. Claire, please. I need to explain. You don't need anything from me, David. You need therapy. You need to make peace with yourself. But you don't need my forgiveness or my understanding. I was in love with her. You were in love with the idea of her. Young, beautiful, unattainable. You wanted her because you couldn't have her. That's not true. Yes, it is. Because as soon as you had her, as soon as she stopped being forbidden, she became boring. Just like I was boring. Just like all your wives were boring. David flinched. That's harsh. It's honest. You don't love people, David. You love the chase. You love feeling desired. You love the drama. But actual love? The boring, steady, showing up everyday kind? You can't do it. You're probably right, David admitted. My therapist says I have intimacy issues. Good for you for figuring that out. Now leave. Don't you want to know if I regret it? If I think about what my life would have been like if I'd never gotten involved with your mother? No, because my life is exactly what it should be. I have a husband who loves me, children who respect me, career I'm proud of. I don't need to know about your regrets because they don't affect me anymore. David stared at me. You've changed. You used to be softer, kinder. I used to be naive. I grew up. The Claire I remember would have forgiven me. The Claire you remember died a long time ago. Metaphorically speaking. I stood up. I have a meeting. It was interesting seeing you, David. But I have no desire to see you again. Claire, wait. Goodbye, David. He left and I sat back down at my desk, my hands shaking slightly. Nathan called 5 minutes later. You okay? You usually call me after big meetings. David showed up at my office. David? Your mother's David. Yeah. Wanted to apologize. Make amends. How do you feel? I feel nothing. He's just a stranger. A ghost from another life. Good. Want me to bring home Thai food for dinner? That sounds perfect. That evening, I told Nathan about the encounter. We were sitting on our back porch watching the sunset, empty plates of pad thai beside us. Do you ever wonder? Nathan asked. About the life you would have had if things had been different. Different how? If you'd fallen for David. If he'd never gotten involved with your mother. If that whole nightmare had never happened. I thought about my first timeline. Dying at 28, alone and heartbroken. Believing I'd wasted the best years of my life. I lived that life, I said. In my head at least. I saw what it looked like to build a future around someone like David. It was empty. Painful. It ended badly. So you're saying I'm the better choice? Nathan teased. You're the only choice. Because you're real. David was always just a fantasy, mine, my mother's, his own. None of us ever really knew him, and he never really knew any of us. That's sad. It is. But it's not my sadness to carry anymore. Nathan kissed my forehead. I love you, you know that? I know. I love you too. 5 years later, I was 60 years old and preparing to retire from my firm. My partner, a brilliant young designer named Maya, was taking over the business. My children were thriving. My son was a teacher, my daughter was a doctor. I had 3 grandchildren who called me every week. Life was good. Then I received a letter from David's daughter. Dear Mrs. Harrison, my name is Sophie Chen. I'm David Chen's daughter from his second marriage. I'm writing because my father recently passed away from cancer. In his final days, he talked about you a lot. About how he'd wronged you and your mother. About how you were the only person who'd ever really seen him clearly. He wanted me to give you this letter. I don't know what it says. But he said it was important that you have it. I'm sorry for your loss, even if it happened a long time ago. Sophie. I opened David's letter with trembling hands. Claire, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Probably a relief for you. I spent my whole life chasing the wrong things. Your mother, power, status, younger women who made me feel important. I burned through 3 marriages, alienated my children, and died alone in a hospital bed with only my daughter there out of obligation. You were right about everything. I didn't know how to love people. I only knew how to consume them. Your mother and I, we deserved each other. We were both selfish, vain people who destroyed everything we touched. But you? You were better than both of us. And I almost destroyed you too. I'm glad you escaped. I'm glad you built a life with someone who actually deserves you. I'm glad you didn't end up like your mother or me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just telling you that you were right to walk away. You saved yourself. Thank you for that final conversation in your office. For being honest enough to tell me what I was. No one else had the courage to do that. I hope you had a good life. David. I read the letter twice, then put it in the back of my desk drawer. Nathan found me there an hour later. Another letter from a dead person? He asked gently. David died. His daughter sent me his final message. And he admitted I was right about everything. That he was broken. That he and my mother deserved each other. That I saved myself by walking away. How does that make you feel? Sad. For him. For my mother. For all the people who spend their lives chasing the wrong things and realize it too late. Do you regret not forgiving him? When he came to your office? No. He needed absolution from himself, not from me. Giving it to him wouldn't have changed anything. Nathan pulled me into a hug. You're very wise for 60. I'm very tired for 60. Can we just watch TV and eat ice cream? Always. 10 years later, I was 70 years old and my health was starting to decline. Nothing serious, just the normal wear and tear of a life well lived. My joints ached. I needed reading glasses. I got tired more easily. But I was surrounded by love. Nathan was retired now, and we spent our days gardening, reading, and spoiling our grandchildren. My children visited regularly. My friends were constant presences. One afternoon my daughter asked me something that made me pause. Mom, do you ever think about Grandma Victoria? Sometimes. Why? I was going through old photo albums with my daughter, and she asked about her. I realized I don't really know anything about your relationship with her. I thought about how to answer. Your grandmother was a complicated woman. She made choices that hurt people, including me. But she was still my mother. Did you love her? I did. And she loved me in her way. But her love was conditional. It depended on me not getting in the way of what she wanted. That sounds lonely. It was. For both of us. I took my daughter's hand. But that's why I've always tried to love you and your brother differently. Unconditionally. Without asking you to shrink yourself to make me comfortable. You've been an amazing mom, my daughter said, tears in her eyes. I learned how by watching mine and doing the opposite. Is that sad? No. It's honest. Not everyone is meant to be a parent. Your grandmother did the best she could with the emotional tools she had. They just weren't very good tools. Do you forgive her? I made peace with her. That's different from forgiveness. What's the difference? Forgiveness implies what she did was okay. Making peace means accepting that it happened, that she chose it, and that I survived it anyway. My daughter hugged me tight. I'm glad you survived. Me too, sweetheart. When I was 75, Nathan had a stroke. He survived, but he wasn't the same. His speech was slurred. His left side was weak. He needed help with basic tasks. I cared for him the way he'd cared for me through my darkest moments, with patience, love, and unwavering commitment. I'm sorry, he said one day, frustrated with his limitations. For what? For being a burden. You're not a burden. You're my husband. This is what in sickness and in health means. You could put me in a facility. Nathan, stop. I'm not your mother-in-law. I don't abandon people when they become inconvenient. You're stuck with me. He smiled, lopsided now, but still the smile I loved. Lucky me. Damn right. Nathan lived for 3 more years. He died peacefully in his sleep, holding my hand, surrounded by our children and grandchildren. At his funeral, I stood at the podium and told the truth about our life together. Nathan and I met in a cemetery, I began. He was working there, and I was visiting my father's grave. I was 26 and heartbroken, convinced I'd never trust anyone again. Nathan was patient. He didn't try to fix me or rush me. He just existed alongside me until I was ready to let someone in. We were married for 47 years. We raised 2 incredible children. We built a life based on respect, partnership, and genuine affection. Nathan taught me that love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic passion. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. He was my best friend, my partner, my safe harbor. And I will miss him every day for the rest of my life. But I'm grateful. Grateful that he found me in that cemetery. Grateful that he waited for me to heal. Grateful that he showed me what real love looks like. Thank you, Nathan, for everything. I buried Nathan in the same cemetery where we'd met, near my father's grave. After the funeral, I went home to our empty house and sat in the silence. For the first time in decades, I thought about my first timeline. About dying at 28, believing I'd wasted my life on David. About the path I didn't take. In that life, I'd died broken and alone. In this life, I'd loved and been loved in return. The difference was everything. I lived alone for 5 more years. My children wanted me to move in with them, but I refused. I like my independence, I told them. I like my house. I like my life. I spent my days reading, gardening, and video calling with my grandchildren. I volunteered at a grief support group, helping other widows and widowers navigate their loss. I was 80 years old and I was content. One afternoon, I was going through old boxes in the attic when I found something I'd forgotten about. The journal I'd kept in my 20s right after my father's death. I opened it to a random page and read, "I'm so tired of being alone. Everyone keeps telling me to move on, to date, to let someone in. But how do I trust anyone after what my mother did? How do I know they won't betray me the same way? Sometimes I wonder if I made a mistake. If I should have just let myself fall for David, even knowing what would happen. At least then I wouldn't be so lonely. But no. I did the right thing. I protected myself. And someday maybe, I'll find someone who was worth the wait." I smiled, remembering the young woman who'd written those words. She'd been so scared, so convinced she'd be alone forever. "You found him," I told my younger self. "You found Nathan. And it was worth every lonely day to get to him." I closed the journal and put it back in the box. That evening, I had dinner with my daughter and her family. My granddaughter, 15 now, bright and opinionated, asked me a question. "Grandma, why didn't you ever talk about your mom? I know she existed, but you never mention her." The table went quiet. My children had learned not to ask about Victoria. But my grandchildren didn't know the whole story. "Your great-grandmother made choices that hurt people," I said carefully. "Including me. So we didn't have a relationship for most of my adult life." "What kind of choices?" "The kind that destroy families." "But you forgave her?" "I made peace with who she was." "That's different." My granddaughter thought about that. "Did she ever apologize?" "Eventually. But by then it was too late to repair what was broken." "Do you regret that? Not having a relationship with her?" I thought about my mother, beautiful, vain, selfish Victoria who died alone at 65, abandoned by everyone she'd hurt. "No," I said honestly, because staying in a relationship with her would have required me to accept treatment I didn't deserve. And I learned a long time ago that some people aren't capable of the kind of love we need. Walking away from them isn't cruel. It's survival. "That's sad," my granddaughter said. "It is. But it's also honest. And sometimes honesty is more important than being nice." When I was 82, my health began to fail in earnest. Cancer like my father. The doctor said I had 6 months, maybe a year. I chose to spend it at home, surrounded by family. My children took turns staying with me. My grandchildren visited constantly. My friends came by to share memories and say goodbye. I wasn't afraid. I'd lived a full life. I'd loved deeply. I'd survived betrayal and built something beautiful from the ashes. On what would be my last day, my daughter sat beside my bed holding my hand. "Mom, I need to tell you something," she said. "What, sweetheart?" "You saved me. Growing up, watching how you loved Dad, how you loved us, how you built a life based on respect and kindness. You saved me from repeating Grandma Victoria's mistakes. You saved yourself. I just showed you a different way. But that's everything, Mom. You broke the cycle. You showed me that love doesn't have to be toxic or conditional or manipulative. You showed me that I could choose differently." I squeezed her hand weakly. "That's all I ever wanted. For you and your brother to have better than I had." We did. We do. Because of you. Not because of me. Because you chose well. You married someone kind. You raised your children with love. That's all you. It started with you, though. I smiled. Then I guess I did okay. You did more than okay, Mom. You did amazing. That night, as I lay in bed drifting between sleep and waking, I had a strange dream. I was 28 again, standing in my childhood home watching David kiss my mother. But this time, instead of feeling devastated, I felt calm. This doesn't hurt anymore, I told them. My mother looked at me with surprise. Why not? Because I know how this ends. I know you'll both end up alone and regretful. I know I'll survive this and build something better. But we hurt you, David said. You did. But I healed. And I learned. And I lived a life you'll never understand because you're both too focused on what you want to see what actually matters. And what matters? My mother asked. Showing up. Being honest. Choosing people who choose you back. Building something real instead of chasing fantasies. That sounds boring, my mother said. It sounds like love, I corrected. Real love. The kind that lasts. The kind that makes you better instead of destroying you. I watched them fade away, hand in hand, chasing their mutual illusion. And I turned and walked out of that house into sunlight, into a life I'd built with my own hands. When I opened my eyes, Nathan was sitting beside my bed. Except Nathan was dead. He'd been dead for 7 years. Am I dying? I asked him. Yes, he said gently. But you're not afraid. No. I'm ready. I've been waiting for you. That's very romantic. Nathan smiled. I learned from the best. I did okay, didn't I? With our life together. You did more than okay. You did perfectly. I'm glad you found me. In that cemetery. I'm glad you waited. I'd wait forever for you, Claire. I felt myself letting go of the pain, the memories, the weight of 82 years. Nathan. Yeah. Thank you. For showing me what love was supposed to be. Thank you for letting me. I closed my eyes and felt peace wash over me. In my first life, I died at 28, broken by betrayal. In my second life, I'd lived to 82, surrounded by love. And that made all the difference. My daughter found me the next morning, peaceful in my sleep, a slight smile on my face. At my funeral, my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren gathered to celebrate a life well lived. My son gave the eulogy. My mother was not a perfect person. She carried wounds from her past that never fully healed. She was cautious with her trust and careful with her heart. But she was also the strongest person I've ever known. She survived betrayal that would have broken most people. She rebuilt her life from nothing. She loved my father with a depth and devotion that taught me what marriage should look like. Most importantly, she broke a cycle. Her mother, our grandmother Victoria, was a woman who prioritized her own desires above everything else, who destroyed relationships in pursuit of validation, who died alone because she pushed everyone away. My mother could have become bitter. She could have let her pain turn her into someone cold and closed off. Instead, she chose differently. She chose to love us unconditionally. She chose to build a life based on kindness and respect. She chose to show us that even when people hurt you, you can still choose to be good. That's her legacy. Not her career, though she was brilliant. Not her accomplishments, though there were many. But the example she set. The cycle she broke. The love she gave freely even when she had every reason not to. Thank you, Mom. For surviving. For choosing us. For showing us a better way. We love you. We'll miss you. And we'll carry your lessons forward to our own children, and their children, and every generation that comes after. You won. Against all odds, against all the pain, against all the betrayal. You won. Rest peacefully. You earned it. They buried me next to Nathan with a simple headstone that read, Claire Harrison. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She chose love. 20 years after my death, my great-granddaughter, named Claire after me, was going through family archives for a school project when she found my old journal from my 20s. She read about my mother's betrayal, my pain, my determination to survive. She read about meeting Nathan, building a life, choosing differently than the generation before me. And she made a decision to share my story. She wrote an essay about breaking cycles, about choosing healing over hatred, about the courage it takes to love again after betrayal. The essay went viral. Thousands of people shared their own stories of family betrayal, of toxic relationships, of finding the strength to walk away. And my great-granddaughter ended her essay with these words. My great-grandmother Claire died when I was 2. I don't remember her. But her story has shaped my entire life. She taught me, through her choices, through her survival, through her refusal to become what had hurt her, that we're not bound by our past. We're not doomed to repeat our parents' mistakes. We can choose differently. She could have let her mother's betrayal destroy her. She could have closed her heart and lived in bitterness. Instead, she healed. She loved. She built something beautiful from the ashes of what had been taken from her. That's the legacy I'm carrying forward. Not victimhood, not resentment, but the knowledge that no matter what life takes from you, you can still choose who you become. Thank you, Great-Grandma Claire, for showing me the way. And somewhere in whatever comes after, I smiled, because I'd done what I set out to do. I'd survived. I'd loved. I'd broken the cycle. And I'd left behind something that mattered. Not buildings or awards or wealth, but a story, a lesson, a choice. The choice to be better than the pain that shaped you. The choice to love even when you've been hurt. The choice to survive and thrive, and show the next generation that there's another way. My name was Claire Harrison. I died twice, once at 28, destroyed by betrayal, and once at 82, surrounded by love. And the second time was everything the first time wasn't. That was my victory. That was my peace. That was my complete story. From death to rebirth to survival to legacy. And it was enough.